By the end of May 2025, every card tied to my name would stop swiping. Not at the dealer, not at the club, not at my expense. I did not yell, I did not make a scene. I just made sure the systems I controlled finally told the truth. I am Samantha 32, a vice president of marketing based in New York City. I build campaigns, read dashboards, and make calm decisions with large budgets. I used to think family betrayal arrived like a shout and a slammed door. I learned it can look like a spreadsheet, a tow truck backing into a driveway, and a silence in a group chat that used to buzz all night. What they did not know was that documentation is my love language. I track spend, I timestamp calls, I keep the receipts literally and digitally. When people lie, the data tells on them. And when the data lines up, I move quietly and all at once. If you have ever carried your family on your back while they told you it was your duty, tell me where you are watching from. You are not alone, and you are not crazy for wanting proof before you say the word no. Here is my world. I live in a small brownstone walk-up in the city. My Ring camera faces the front stoop and sees the mailbox. That detail matters. My office is in Midtown. I commute up to Westchester on weekends because that is where the house sits, where my father likes to host, where the lawn always looks like it was ironed. The neighbors wave like a commercial. It is the kind of suburb where people notice what you drive before they ask what you do. I am the responsible one. I always have been. I packed lunches for myself in high school and filed tax extensions for my parents in college. I paid my way through school with scholarships and internships while my younger brother Tyler, 31 now, was the golden child everyone believed would figure it out any minute. He is charming like a movie character. He can sell winter coats on a beach. He can also sell the idea that every mess belongs to someone else. When I took the promotion in New York, my salary moved into a range that sounds like a headline. About $600,000 a year when you add base and bonus. That number made my father's eyes light up like a dashboard at night. He never said, "Congratulations, you did that." He said, "This is what family can do with your help." He said it like a promise and a bill at the same time. I am not a martyr. I am a planner. I set a cap for support, a clean amount I could afford without gutting my future. $15,000 a month. 40% of my take-home. Temporary, I told myself, long enough to get everyone stable. I wrote it into my budget like any other line item. I told my father the boundary, and I believed he heard me. Plant these 3 facts now because they will pay off later. First, my Ring camera logs every time someone opens my mailbox. Second, my banking app records the location and device for every login and every authorized user request. Third, my family loves our group text and forgets that phones do not forget. Words live there like fingerprints. There is more context you need to understand why I moved the way I did. My mentor Evan is the one who reminds me that numbers are not just numbers, they are choices. He is the validator in this story, the person who listens when I say I think something is wrong and answers, then measure it. My best friend Callie is my anchor. She holds my shoulders when I spiral and says, "You can be generous without being a doormat." My cousin Jenna is the revealer. She has a phone in her hand at every family event. Sometimes that is annoying, sometimes that is evidence. You will see which it became. My father is not a stranger to me. He is my father. I will call him by his name once so you have it, Robert. Robert believes that love looks like compliance and that a daughter's competence is a resource he can withdraw without asking. He says things like family first and means do what I want. He says I am still your father and means I am still your credit line. He wants to be seen a certain way in Westchester. That is how the red Italian car entered the picture. I will explain the car soon. For now, know this, the lease was in my name because I was the primary applicant. My father was an authorized driver. I signed to help him keep up appearances. That single signature is the reason a tow truck would one day hum down a quiet street at a very inconvenient time. I am not proud of every compromise I made, but I am not ashamed of trying to help the people who raised me. I am not a hero. I am not a villain. I am a daughter who learned to audit her life with the same precision she uses at work. That is the tone of this story. Dignified, self-aware, firm. By the end of May 2025, the boundary I wrote on a slide for myself became real. Cards stopped. Auto pays ended. Doors that had been propped open with guilt and habit clicked shut. And because I do not bluff, I did not announce any of it in advance. I set lawful processes in motion. I let natural consequences arrive on their own schedule. We are just getting started. In the next part, I will show you the sacrifice pattern that trained everyone, including me, to believe I would always pick up the bill. I will lay out the years, the amounts, and the moments I told myself were small. They were not small, they were breadcrumbs. and they led exactly where you think. I did not become the responsible one overnight. It happened one small decision at a time. A ride to practice, a signature on a permission slip, a call to the cable company that should not have been my job and somehow became my specialty. By the time I was out of college, responsibility felt like a muscle I could move without thinking. That was the first trap. When you carry the load well, people forget it is heavy. Growing up, I was the planner. I kept a paper calendar in middle school and color-coded it with highlighters. I learned to budget when other kids were learning to drive. I paid for textbooks by tutoring and by running small campus events that actually made a profit. When I tell you I paid my way through school, I mean it literally. Scholarships, work study, internships that turned into offers because I showed up early and stayed late. Tyler was different from the start. He is 1 year younger than me, 31 now, and he has the kind of smile that gets you out of trouble. Teachers loved him. Coaches loved him. Our parents adored him. He was the golden child with a string of make-believe lifelines. When he won, he was a genius. When he lost, the world was unfair. It was easy to cheer for him. It was harder to hold him accountable. Guess who filled that gap? When I landed the promotion in New York City and moved into leadership, my income jumped into that delicate category people whisper about. Around $600,000 a year between base and bonus. Enough to change a life. Enough to tempt everyone around that life. I told myself I could help without losing myself. I told myself I could write rules and stick to them. So I set a cap, $15,000 a month in family support, 40% of my take-home. Temporary. 2 words that made me feel safe. I put it into my budget like any brand allocation. I even wrote a small memo to myself, purpose, timeline, exit criteria. It sounds clinical now, but it mattered. If I was going to be generous, I wanted to be precise. At first, the money did what it was supposed to do. It covered utilities and groceries. It gave my parents breathing room. It kept the house in Westchester feeling calm. Then the line blurred. Club dues appeared with a note from my father, Robert, that said, relationships are made on the golf course. Special dinners started showing up on my statements as business development, even though the only business was him being seen by the right people. I pushed back gently, then more firmly. He told me I was overthinking it. He said family first and smiled like he had said something noble. Looking back now, I can see the training program we all took without signing up. I was trained to pay quickly to stop the discomfort. They were trained to ask in ways that sounded urgent. I said yes to keep the peace, then told myself I would recalibrate next month. Next month always came with a new reason. The small details speak louder than the big ones. A $40 bourbon run on a night when I was stuck in an airport. A $300 cash advance at a casino the day after I transferred funds into a shared account for a medical bill. A $2,000 overdraft fee because a hotel hold hit a card that was supposed to be used only for gas and medication. Each one was easy to explain away. Together, they were a map. I made one decision that would become the axis for the turning of this story. My father started telling me he needed a car that signaled success. The neighbors had certain expectations. He said clients would not take him seriously if he did not drive something with a badge that matched the lawn. He wanted an Italian hybrid that looked like a glossy ad. The dealer would not approve him alone. I agreed to be the primary applicant on the lease so he could be an authorized driver. I told myself I was helping him build credit and helping my mother avoid arguments. The paperwork felt transactional. The subtext was not. That car did more than sit in the driveway like a trophy. It changed the way my father walked into rooms. It changed the way he talked to me. He started to use phrases like people expect us to show up a certain way. He loved the word us when the bills came to me. Tyler followed his own pattern in the background. He got into crypto when everyone did and stayed when smarter people stepped back. He dabbled in sports betting and called it investing in morale. Every time the numbers went south, my phone buzzed. It was never a direct ask. It was always an orbit. Dad says you are helping with the club dues this quarter. Dad says the car insurance renewal is easier on your card. Dad says you are a team player. He never asked me if I was okay. He asked if I was available. Callie watched me manage all this the way I manage a campaign. She is the kind of friend who hears your tone before you hear it yourself. She would say you are breathing like you forgot how. Then she would make tea and ask for the breakdown. I would show her a budget and call it a plan. She would point to the part that said temporary and ask me when temporary ends. Evan, my mentor, did the thing mentors are supposed to do. He mirrored my logic back to me without letting me lie to myself. You run 8-figure budgets, he said. If you want to keep supporting your family, do it with the same discipline. Audit what you have already done. Decide what you will not do again. Put dates on decisions. He never told me to stop caring. He told me to measure the cost of caring. There is a cousin you need to remember here too. Jenna. She is the one who documents everything without thinking about consequences. She goes live for fun. She posts stories because it is a habit. At family events, her phone is part of her outfit. I used to roll my eyes at it. Not anymore. Looking back now, every 2 or 3 minutes of memory has a breadcrumb I can point to. My father reminding me, you live under my roof long after I bought my own brownstone walk-up in the city. He meant my rules apply where I stand. Me sliding another transfer from my app while promising myself it was the last time. The line in our family group text that said she has it, she is fine, she can spot us until the baby gets here, typed by my father. And heart reacted by relatives who liked the idea of my success more than they liked the reality of my boundaries. When I talk about the total, I want you to hear it slowly because I needed to hear it slowly too. Over 24 months from May of 2023 through May of 2025, I provided support that added up to $360,000. On top of that, there were gifts and supposed emergencies that totaled another $120,000. Because I was the primary applicant on the car lease, I covered around $6,500 a month for roughly 18 months, which comes to little over $117,000. Put together, that is just under $600,000. Numbers like that can turn love into debt if you are not careful. I did not do all of this blindly. I kept records. I saved every receipt, every confirmation email, every transfer note. I gave my father a dedicated card with strict rules attached to it and wrote those rules down. Gas and medication only. He nodded and told me I was a lifesaver. Then the liquor charge showed up, and I told myself it was a one-time thing. The moment that still stings came during a holiday dinner. We were clearing plates, and my father lifted his glass and said to Samantha, our safety net. The room laughed like it was a sweet compliment. I smiled because that is what you do when a joke slices the air and you do not want the room to bleed. Later that night, I lay awake and repeated the words safety net until they sounded like a job title I forgot to accept. Back then, I believed I could fix this with nicer spreadsheets. I believed an updated cap or a stricter memo would change behavior that had never been forced to change. I thought I could outwork entitlement. That belief is its own kind of arrogance, and I can say that now because I have forgiven the version of me who tried. A pattern cannot continue without silent agreements. Mine were simple. Keep the peace. Avoid the fight. Solve the problem fast so I could focus on work. I did it to protect my schedule. I did it to protect my mother from my father's moods. I did it because my brother was about to become a father himself, and I did not want the house to feel tense. Every reason was understandable. None of them justified what followed. You might be wondering where the proof lives in all of this. It lives everywhere. In bank statements that read like a diary. In a Ring camera that quietly watched my mailbox. In a banking app that logged logins from places I was not. In a group text that turned my generosity into a given. The evidence was always there, I just had not pulled it together yet. Looking back now, I can see the day I turned toward the truth. It was a Tuesday when the calendar looked normal. Meetings, a lunch, a stop in Westchester to drop off groceries. There was nothing special about it, and that is exactly why it mattered. Patterns end on ordinary days because ordinary days are when you finally let yourself admit you are tired. I drove up after work, parked behind the red car, and carried in a bag of produce. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and bourbon. My father was on the phone in the next room telling someone I would co-sign anything because those girls at that level get paid well. He laughed. He said we are building our life. He did not whisper. He did not pause. He said it like the truth could not possibly cost him anything. I stood very still and looked at a picture of Tyler and his pregnant girlfriend on the fridge, held up by a magnet shaped like a golf ball. Next to it hung a tiny pair of baby socks. That is how entitlement hides. It wraps itself in family milestones and dares you to pull the thread. I did not confront him that night. I put the groceries away. I made tea. I drove home to the city and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open. I did what Evan taught me. I started an audit. I opened a new folder and named it with the date. I dragged in bank statements. I took screenshots of group texts. I exported login histories from my banking app. I wrote a timeline, 2 years, 24 months. Line by line, quiet work that would become loud. That is the sacrifice pattern. Years of being the reliable one. Months of money that turned into a story I did not want to read out loud. A family system that rewarded charm and penalized boundaries. None of it excuses what my father did next. All of it explains why I was the last to admit what I already knew. We are about to move from sacrifice to discovery. In the next part, you will see how suspicion became certainty, not because of a single dramatic moment, but because the evidence started to agree with itself. Breadcrumb by breadcrumb, the truth walked out of the shadows and sat down at the table. The night I started the audit, I promised myself one thing: no dramatics, just facts. If I was right, the numbers would agree with me. If I was wrong, the numbers would set me free. Breadcrumb 1 came fast. My Ring app flagged motion on a weekday morning while I was on a Zoom. The thumbnail wasn't a blur or a trick of light. It was my father Robert at my brownstone stoop, opening my mailbox, sliding out a thick envelope and tucking it into his jacket. He looked straight at the camera, smiled and waved like he was borrowing a lawn tool, not removing my mail. I let the clip play. Then I downloaded it, labeled it with the date and time, and added it to a folder named Evidence. Breadcrumb 2 showed up that same afternoon. My banking app logs every login with location and device. A late-night entry from my parents' address in Westchester appeared next to a device I did not own. The next morning, an authorized user request hit one of my cards from an email handle that ended with my father's initials. I took screenshots and exported the access log. The audit was already doing its job. Breadcrumb 3 was quieter and meaner. Our family group text, the one that runs on autopilot, lit up with plans for Tyler's baby shower. My aunt typed, "She has it, she's fine, she can spot us until the baby gets here." A minute later, my father replied, "She knows family comes first." Tyler dropped a prayer hands emoji and a golf flag. No one asked if I was okay. They asked if I was available. I saved the thread as a PDF and moved it into Evidence. Words have fingerprints. You just have to collect them. I kept going. I pulled my credit report, all 3 bureaus. I read every line slowly. That is where Breadcrumb 4 lived. A hard inquiry I hadn't authorized. A retail account opened in my name that sent physical mail to my address. The irony made me laugh out loud. If the approval letter was in my mailbox, the Ring clip had already told me who likely grabbed it. I called the issuer. I kept my voice even. I said I was reviewing a new account I did not open. The agent read the application back to me, including an email that matched my father's initials and a phone number I recognized. I stated clearly that the prior cards where my father was an authorized user had been granted by me in the past and were not part of this dispute. I asked to freeze and flag the new retail account and to remove the hard inquiry. I recorded the call where it was legal to do so, saved the file with the agent's name and the case number, and added it to Evidence. Clean, precise. No confusion between what I had allowed and what I had not. While I was on a roll, I exported 2 full years of statements, 24 months, May of 2023 through May of 2025. I categorized everything like a budget scientist. Support transfers, gifts and emergencies, vehicle lease payments, club dues, fees. The totals weren't new to me, but seeing them organized turned suspicion into certainty. $360,000 in support. $120,000 in extras that were always framed as urgent. About $6,500 a month in vehicle payments for roughly 18 months, a hair over $117,000 because I was the primary applicant on the lease, and my father was only an authorized driver. Just under $600,000 in all. Numbers do not yell. They do not guilt. They just sit there until you are brave enough to read them. Breadcrumb 5 was a pattern hidden in the small charges. A $40 bourbon purchase on a night I was on a plane. A $300 cash advance at a casino ATM the day after I refilled a shared emergency account. A $2,000 overdraft fee triggered when a hotel hold hit the wrong card, the one that was supposed to be gas and medication only. Each one alone was forgivable. Together, they spelled out contempt. I called Callie over because she knows when to ask for the play-by-play. We sat at my kitchen table with tea and laptops like it was a school night. I showed her the Ring clip. She exhaled hard through her nose. I showed her the login logs and the authorized user request. She said, "So, they're not just asking, they're engineering." Then I read the group text aloud. Reading it stripped away the family tone and left only the math of entitlement. She took my phone gently and said, "Screenshot everything. Put it in a folder. Name it with dates." Then she looked at me and added, "And stop talking to yourself like you caused this." Evan, my mentor, took the next call. I gave him the summary like a campaign post-mortem. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "You already did the hardest part. You measured it. Now decide your thresholds." He meant something simple and profound. Pick the point where you do not negotiate anymore and defend it. As the audit strengthened my spine, complicity floated to the surface. Tyler wasn't sending direct requests, but every dad says text did the same job. Dad says the club dues are time sensitive. Dad says insurance renewals are easier on your card. Dad says the dealer needs you to confirm. He never said I need you. He said Dad says you will. That is how golden children stay polished. Someone else holds the cloth. Then came the document that made everything click. A lease packet copy sat in my email from when we signed at the dealership. I had saved it without really reading it. That night I did. Slowly, line by line. It spelled out who was the primary applicant, me who was an authorized driver, my father, and what rights the primary had if payment stopped. Early termination options, voluntary surrender procedures, the ability to schedule a pickup within a defined window. I did not act on any of that yet, but reading it shifted the ground under my feet. Until that moment, the car felt like a favor I could not undo without causing a war. Now it looked like a contract with clauses that protected me if I was brave enough to use them. The next breadcrumb arrived by voicemail. My father's voice calm and practiced. My card was declined. Fix it. Then, as if reading from a script he'd used my whole life, I am still your father. I saved the audio, labeled it, and did not call back. Facts first, feelings later. Complicity did not stop at my father and Tyler. My aunt called with that maternal hum that sounds like concern and functions like pressure. She said, "Do not embarrass your father. The shower is coming up. You know how important appearances are right now." I said, "Appearances are not my responsibility." She said, "You have such a good heart." That is the funniest sentence in the world when it is being used like a crowbar. Jenna, my cousin, sent me a different kind of breadcrumb without knowing it. She forwarded me a clip from a family barbecue where my father bragged about keeping up with the neighbors. He lifted a glass and said it's all about optics. Jenna captioned it with a laughing emoji like classic Grandpa Robert. I watched the clip 3 times. Optics. That word explained the car, the club, the pressure. Optics do not pay bills. People do. The last breadcrumb before certainty was a letter. It was a welcome packet from the retail card I had just disputed. It arrived a week late because thanks to my ring clip, I knew it probably took a detour through my father's jacket. The letter used my name, my address, and a signature that wasn't mine. Seeing it in black and white in my hands made my stomach drop and then settle. It is strange how relief can sit right next to disgust. Proof does that. It clears your mind even as it breaks your heart. I laid everything out on my table like a caseboard. Ring footage, login logs, group texts, statements and totals, lease terms, voicemails. The barbecue clip, the welcome packet. A simple timeline ran through the middle. 2 years of support, 1.5 years of car payments. Weeks of requests that were never framed as requests. One holiday toast where I was called the safety net. One Tuesday when I overheard my father promise someone I would sign anything. None of these moments screamed on their own. Together they harmonized into certainty. That is when suspicion ended and clarity began. I was not imagining patterns. I was measuring them. And once you can measure a pattern, you can end it. I closed the laptop and stood at the sink, hands braced on cool porcelain, breathing like Callie had taught me. Calm inhale. Longer exhale. I did not plan revenge that night. I planned accountability. In the next part, I will show you how the surface betrayal cracked open to reveal who helped, how long it had been running, and why the timing of the baby shower was not an accident on my part, but a consequence written into a contract. 3 layers, 1 revelation. Then finally, the sky stayed blue while everything else changed. Clarity did not arrive with a shout. It arrived with layers. I could finally name them. First layer, the surface betrayal, what happened? My father, Robert, used my trust and my credit like a personal banking product. He added himself as an authorized user on cards I originally allowed, and then stretched those permissions until the rules meant nothing. He opened a retail account in my name using his email handle and a phone number I recognized. He took mail from my brownstone mailbox, smiling into the Ring camera as if that lens were a neighbor. He liked sentences that ended with family first, and he said, "I am still your father," like a password that should unlock any door. Second layer, the deeper conspiracy, who helped? Tyler never asked me for money outright. He let Dad says do the work for him. Dad says the club dues are time sensitive. Dad says the insurance renewal is easier on your card. Dad says the dealer needs you to confirm. My aunt supported the performance with lines about not embarrassing my father and keeping the peace before the baby arrived. Even my cousin Jenna played a part she did not mean to play. She filmed moments we all thought were harmless. A backyard toast where my father bragged about optics. A glance between Tyler and my father whenever the bill arrived. No one forged my signature to my face. They just built a story where my success was a communal resource and my consent was assumed. Third layer, the pattern recognition. How long it had been running and what it really was. This was not a rough month. This was a 2-year system. 24 months of support that totaled $360,000. $120,000 in gifts and supposed emergencies. Around $6,500 a month for roughly 18 months to cover the car lease because I was the primary applicant and my father was only an authorized driver. Just under $600,000 in all. The math did not accuse me. It absolved me. I was not overly sensitive. I was accurate. The layers snapped together in one scene. A baby shower in mid-May. Westchester at its glossiest. The lawn looked pressed. The balloon arch was pastel and expensive. The playlist hopped from oldies to early 2000s. The sky was the kind of blue that makes you forget weather exists. People mingled and praised the future. My hands were steady because I had already done the hard part the night before. I had organized the evidence and read the lease packet like it was gospel. I had also taken one step that mattered more than any speech I could give. As the primary applicant on the car, I had initiated an early termination through a voluntary surrender documented in writing with the leasing company. They scheduled a pickup window that covered that weekend. The tow team had a work order, a GPS location, and my authorization. I did not pick the baby shower to make a point. I picked a legal window when I knew the car would be home. My father chose the crowd. Cause and effect did the rest. Inside the house, I circulated like a guest who knew her lines. I hugged relatives. I answered questions about work with short, polite sentences. I could hear my mentor Evan in my head. Pick your thresholds and defend them. I had. I was about to. The room shifted when my father approached. He wore the smile he saves for neighbors with titles. He said, "Give me the keys. I am taking the car to pick up a special gift." He pitched his voice just loud enough for people to hear. It sounded generous. It was control. "No," I said. Calm, flat, practiced. He blinked like I had mispronounced my own name. He reached toward my bag. I stepped back half a foot. The air tightened. Conversations faltered. Someone in the kitchen turned the music down without meaning to. In the far corner, Jenna lifted her phone as she always does, unaware that her habit was about to become documentation. Then the sound that does not belong at a baby shower rolled up the driveway, a low diesel hum. Tires over gravel. The tow truck eased into the side yard with the precision of a surgeon. The driver checked the address, the plate, and his work order. I walked outside because I am the person who signs things with my full legal name, and on a voluntary surrender, my signature is the one that matters. The driver handed me a clipboard. We confirmed identity. We confirmed property. We confirmed consent. There was no scene to make. It was a contract completing itself. Around me, the symbols were loud. Pastel balloons bobbing in a breeze. The smell of sugared frosting. Grass so green it looked edited. The tow bed tilted with a hydraulic sigh. The car rolled forward in neutral and then rose smooth and inevitable until it sat level with the horizon. For a second, it looked weightless. That is how a status symbol ends. Not with a smash, but with a gentle lift and a set of straps. I went back inside. The house had gone still in that way rooms go still when people do not yet know which script to use. I did not raise my voice. I put my laptop on the dessert table beside a tower of cupcakes. I opened a short deck. Not dramatic, just facts. Slide 1, 24 months, $360,000 in support, dates, transfers, notes. Slide 2, $120,000 in gifts and emergencies. Line items with short descriptions. Which months? Which reasons? How often the word urgent had been used. Slide 3, vehicle lease payments, approximately $6,500 per month for roughly 18 months, a little over $117,000 total. Primary applicant me. Authorized driver my father. Early termination processed as voluntary surrender to minimize impact to my own credit. Slide 4. Federal Trade Commission identity theft report and police report case numbers regarding the new retail card. The unauthorized hard inquiry and the theft of mail from my mailbox as captured on my Ring camera. A single line clarifying what this covered and what it did not cover. This report addressed only accounts and inquiries I did not authorize. It did not dispute the cards I had previously allowed him to use. Slide 5. A short audio clip. My father's voice on the phone saying she will co-sign anything those girls at that level get paid while we are building our life. The recording did not need commentary. It needed context. I added one sentence out loud. I was the primary applicant on the lease. You were an authorized driver. Words matter. Someone whispered, "Is this necessary?" That word again, necessary. I met their eyes without anger. Necessary is what you call boundaries when you have not seen them in a while. My father tried a familiar script. "You cannot do this to me." I held my voice steady. "I did not do this to you. You agreed to terms you did not keep. This is me ending my part of the agreement the right way." Tyler stepped forward, hands up in that "let us all calm down" posture people adopt when they are not the ones paying. He said, "This is a baby shower." I said, "I agree," which is why I am not yelling. I am presenting facts and letting the facts stand. Then I closed the laptop. The room breathed again, but differently. You can feel it when a power dynamic shifts. It is almost physical. The people who ran on my willingness to smooth things over looked around and found no more smooth surfaces. Without my consent, the family machine had no fuel. Outside, the driver finished the paperwork. He asked politely if I wanted a copy. I did. He thanked me for being organized. He drove away. The sound faded down the street until the party noises tried to resume their normal shape and failed. The symbolic details anchored the revelation. The sky refused to match the mood. It stayed bright and generous while my world rearranged itself. The balloon arch wobbled. The DJ reset the playlist and then lowered it again when no one danced. On the kitchen island, a knife half sliced through a cake that read, "Welcome, little one." I stared at that phrase. Welcome. There is always something being born when something else ends. I did not ask anyone to pick a side. I did not invite debate. I did not shame. I simply let the truth arrive at the exact speed of cause and effect. The car left because the lease had been lawfully ended. The money ended because the support agreement I had with myself finally meant something. The narrative ended because the evidence had finished its presentation. Every breadcrumb from the last 2 years connected in that moment. The ring clip explained the missing mail. The login logs explained the midnight access. The group text explained the entitlement. The lease packet explained my rights. The totals explained my exhaustion. The barbecue toast about optics explained the obsession with being seen. Even Jenna's habit of filming explained itself. Sometimes documentation is a nuisance, and sometimes it is civic duty. Awakening is not about rage. It is about alignment. Facts line up, values line up, actions follow. I did not need anyone to admit fault. I needed to stop participating in my own depletion. That is the revelation that matters. From there, the path was obvious. Calm steps, clean paperwork, clear boundaries. In the next part, I will show you exactly how I turned that moment into a process. Evidence compiled, calls made, agencies notified, contracts closed the right way, no shouting, no threats. Only systems doing what systems do when you feed them proof and refuse to back down. Awakening gave me clarity. Clarity gave me a checklist. I did not argue. I executed. First, I finalized the file. Every bank statement, text screenshot, ring clip, login log, lease page, voicemail, and timeline lived in a single evidence folder labeled by date. I wrote a one-page summary so any banker, lawyer, or investigator could grasp the facts in a minute. Second, I secured my credit. I placed freezes with all 3 bureaus and set fraud alerts. I disputed the unauthorized hard inquiry and the retail account I did not open. I attached my Federal Trade Commission identity theft report and my police report, both specific to the retail card, the inquiry, and the theft of mail, captured on my Ring camera. I did not dispute prior cards I had explicitly authorized for my father. Clear lines prevent confusion. Third, I shut the money doors. I removed my father as an authorized user on every card. I canceled all autopays linked to his bills. I closed the old emergency account. I initiated charge disputes only for clearly unauthorized transactions and let the bank handle what qualified under their policies. I did not rely on peer-to-peer app reversals for payments I had approved. That is not how those systems work, and pretending they do only delays real solutions. Fourth, I finished the car. Because I was the primary applicant on the lease and my father was only an authorized driver, I processed an early termination as a voluntary surrender in writing with the leasing company. The pickup happened inside their scheduled window, which is why the tow truck rolled in during the party. It was not a stunt. It was a contract completing itself. I requested documentation so the termination would show as voluntary, and the impact to my own credit would be minimized. Fifth, I drew legal and workplace boundaries. My attorney petitioned for a temporary restraining order to prevent harassment at my apartment and office. Building security and HR received a short factual memo, the order attached, and my direct contact if there were incidents. There had already been one attempt to approach the lobby. The front desk handled it and logged the interaction. We kept everything calm and on record. Sixth, I created a clean public narrative. No names, no doxing. I wrote a brief post on LinkedIn about financial boundaries and caregiving burnout with a note about how to protect your credit if a relative abuses access. Colleagues understood. Family members who watched my cousin's live video already had their version of events. I did not add gasoline, I let the proof stand. Seventh, I prepared for the aftershocks. I drafted simple scripts. I am not available for financial support. Please direct billing issues to your providers. Any account request will be denied. I practiced them out loud. Scripts are a kindness to the future you. Consequences landed with the same calm precision as the preparation. Cards tied to my name stopped working for anyone but me. Country club dues went unpaid and the membership lapsed. The red car did not come back because there was no lease to keep. My father's credit absorbed the impact of bills he had not paid. Neighbors noticed the missing car in the quiet driveway. They asked polite questions he could not answer with optics. My father tried one last line, "You cannot do this to me." I answered once, "I did not do this to you. You created a system, I turned it off, then I stopped responding." Tyler texted in the language of performance. "You made a scene." I sent him a budget template and a link to a counseling hotline. He replied with silence, which is sometimes the most honest thing a person has. My aunt called to ask for an apology for the embarrassment. I declined. I told her I would not discuss money optics or appearances again. She said, "You have such a good heart." I said, "That is why I am done." Said, "That is why." At work, I delivered my campaign and kept my calendar clean. HR appreciated the documentation and the heads up. The doorman knew to call before allowing unknown visitors upstairs. At home, I cooked, slept, and let my nervous system relearn quiet. By the end of May of 2025, the promise I made in the opening became true. Every card tied to my name stopped swiping for anyone but me. Not at the dealer, not at the club, not out of guilt or habit. The machine only ran when I turned the key. There were attempts at soft landings. A voicemail that led with, "I am still your father." A text that said, "Family first." I saved them. I did not engage. Dignity is a decision you make once and then defend with silence. The immediate aftermath looked like a new equilibrium taking shape in real time. Fewer pings, fewer emergencies, fewer dinners where someone waited for me to reach for the check. When you remove the reliable fixer, a system either learns or collapses. Either outcome is information. Months later, I stood under warm lights at an industry dinner and heard my name called as a leader to watch. I thanked my team, shook hands, and went home to my brownstone walk-up that finally felt like mine again. The next morning, I signed papers to launch a scholarship for students who are paying their own way through school while supporting family. The first grant went to a young woman who reminded me of the version of me that packed lunches and studied between shifts. I cried when I hit send, not because of sadness, because a boundary can become a bridge if you build it right. Callie is still my anchor. She checks my breathing and my calendar. Evan still sends calendar holds titled Boundary Review. Jenna apologized. She handed me a baby gift and asked how to make it right. I told her to give the gift directly to Tyler's family and to keep filming life, but to get consent when the story is not hers. She nodded and hugged me. We are not as close as we were. That is okay. Clarity rearranges circles. Here is the lesson I earned. Chosen family is not a rejection of blood. It is the decision to stand where you are respected. Love without consent is control. Help without limits is harm. A daughter is not an emergency fund, and a father's sentence, "I am still your father," is not a credit line. If you have ever had to choose your peace over your family's approval, I am with you. If you have ever drawn a boundary and watched the room go still, I am proud of you. Tell me where you are watching from. Tell me the line you drew. And if stories like this help you breathe a little easier, subscribe. I share receipts and I share recovery. For the ones who want the steps in one breath, here they are. Evidence, freeze, dispute, close, notify, protect, no contact. Rebuild. Calm beats chaos, process beats panic, truth beats optics. I am Samantha. I am 32. I work in marketing. I used to think being the responsible one meant saving everyone. Now I know it means saving myself first, telling the truth second, and letting systems do the work I used to do alone. The conversation is over. Those days are done.